So let's talk about rewiring an Eclipse computerized mat cutter. This is a Eclipse 32 by 40 upright because it stands more vertical than horizontal like a table. Picked this up at some garage sale and it needs a lot of work, so we're going to rewire it here. I have removed the cutting head. I've got it laying over here, and I have removed all of the wiring. So I disconnected all the connectors, if there were connectors, and I pulled all the wiring out. And the way I did that is I removed this cover here. Let's get a wrench and take that off of there. Okay. And sometimes there's a wall, a metal wall in here with connectors in it. I took those out. Sometimes the wire just loops from here to here, which is the way we're going to put it back. And then what you do is just leave this one that goes to the cutting head hanging straight down here like that. But loosen these screws here, and then tip these so that you can take the this off of here with a like that. Okay, and then remove this cover right here. So there's going to be a bunch of screws down here too. So I'm going to take that off right there. I've kind of pre-done a lot of this. Come on. Okay. And then there's going to be connections for the cable track right here. You can just leave this cable track hanging straight down like that. Makes it easy to feed the wires in. Okay, or pull them out. And then if we go back here, the wires that come up the arm come up from here and bend and go into this cable track. So in this cable track you have the wires and hoses for the cutting head, the Z-axis, and you also have the wires for the Y motor, which is here, and the brake, and the home switch for the Y-axis. So your Z-axis and Y-axis wires are in this cable track right here. And that cable track connects right here. And then your wires go down through this hole and come out the bottom right there. And then connect to these connectors, or they go in through a central cover like this one, central cover right here, no connectors along the top. Those connectors are inside right there. So now older machines, they will not have connectors. There will be the wire from the motor, and it will go all the way through and down to the electrical cabinet, and that's problematic for testing. So we always remove or upgrade those machines to have connectors right here, and then right here for the X motor. And this is about 18 inches of wire here, or maybe a foot, but the length of wire here and here should be the same, because someday you might need to change this motor with that motor for testing purposes, and you won't want this one to have too short of wire so that when you put it over here it can't reach there. So keep this length the same, and it's about 18 inches of wire. All right, so What we want to end up with is something like this, so that we have connectors for the motor and the home switch here for the x-axis. And push this over here, you can see that that cable is fixed. It doesn't move, it just runs right here and then goes down this central bundle. And it's the Z, or the cables for the cutting head, that come up this arm and into this cable track, and then the Y also into this cable track and down that central hole and down into the electrical panel. So back to this machine. So I've removed all those wires. This machine has had some upgrades done to it in its lifetime. It used to have an old ISA-based controller card with a different interconnection module here, and this one now has the PCI controller with the 100-pin SCSI cable there. Let's see if this helps. So the 100-pin SCSI cable. Okay, and then it runs up through the bottom of the electrical panel and connects to the interconnection module. All right. So I've also taken off all of the wire way covers so that I can see what's going on. That's not necessary for rewiring the gantry, but I'm just showing you where we're at so we have a common starting point. Okay, now so this cable track has got this bend in it right here, right? This is a problem, this bend, for feeding wires. It's kind of a hassle. So there's two different ways to go about this. One way, disconnect this cable track here and lay it out flat so that you can feed the wires all the way through and then bend it back over. That's a handy way to do it. But if, let's say, you're just rewiring this motor, okay, just the Y motor, you don't want to take the whole cutting head wiring all apart, so you can lay that down. So the easiest way to do this is you feed the wires in this cable track with the arm clear over here, and you feed them in as far as you can get them over to here. Okay, and they'll go in really nice and easy. And then you pull the arm back over, which now your wiring that you fed as far over is clear up here. So now it's bypassed this bend, so you don't have to fight with this bend. So then you can push the wires until they come out this end. And then you can run them down the arm or stop here for the Y motor. Okay, so that's the trick, is have your motors all unplugged here, and then you can manually move this arm around. Okay, so you can get this cable track here as straight and flat as possible for feeding your wires in clear over to here, almost all the way. And then when you pull this back over here, the end of your wire is going to be right here. So it'll be real easy just to push it that extra few inches to get it out here where you can get a hold of it and pull on it easier. Now, you want to keep your wires as flat as possible. You don't want them twisting around each other. You want them to lay side by side by side. You don't want to have one wire on top of another wire. That will just create a pulling problem on your wires. You also don't want to tape your wires together inside this cable track. Okay, you can tape the ends of them together to help feed the wires in, but when you're all done, there should be no tape here. All right, no tape inside the cable tracks, because the wires need to move around as the cable track flexes. All right, so I'm gonna shut this down for a minute while I get some wires fed in here and show you what we're talking about. Okay? All right. Here's an example of, I used a little electrical tape to tape the two tubes to one of the wires cables, because the cables are stiffer and easier to feed through than the tubing. So I'm just showing you that. Okay, so I fed my wire and tubing through this hole, and then I fed it through the cable track here. You can see it right there. And I fed it down here as far as it would go, like right there. It won't go any farther. It's right there. Maybe this will help. So it's, the wire's right there. So now if I pull this arm back over, see that wire stayed right there. So now I can shove a little bit more in, and each time I shove it, it keeps going. And there it is right there. Now from here I can pull it in as far as I need to. So that's what I mean by having this cable track as flat as possible for as long as possible, so you can get the wire started in there. And then we'll do the same thing with the Y-axis wire. These are for the cutting head. So that gets you a good idea of how to get the wiring up here. Okay? Okay, so I've got the next bigger cable for the Z-axis pushed through. I did exactly the same thing. Now what I want to point out is, well, two things. One, this little hole right down here, those edges are sharp. So you want to be careful with your fingers, but you also want to be careful with the cable that you don't cut the cable in there. Also, notice on this end I've got the hoses down here against this edge of the cable track, and then I've got the 4-conductor wire next to it, and then I've got the bigger wire next to it. Now you don't want to get these crossed over anywhere. I'm gonna say that 100 times. And so I want to make sure my hoses are against this same edge up here, and I want to make sure my 4-conductor and my 12-conductor are in there. And then you can see how wide that is right there. I got plenty space to put another set of those in here for the Y motor right here. So plenty of room in here. It's just got to tuck them up there nice. I use a screwdriver like you see me doing. Okay, so I'm going to continue on, and I'm going to do with the Y wires next. Okay. Okay, so I'm going to put the Y wire in. So I'm going to push the arm all the way over here to the left end of the machine. Your wire's got a natural curve to it, so I'm going to try and put it in this way so I don't have to fight against it. I'm just pushing it in as far as I can get it. I'm going to pull the arm back. And now I can kind of help it a little bit with my finger. Make sure this one stays out of the way while we're doing this. Sometimes a little tool is helpful. There we go. So the y-axis doesn't have to go very far. So now I've got all the wires and tubing in this cable track. Now I can feed these wires down through the center hole. Just like that. So now those wires and tubes are all in there. Okay, that's it. Okay, so just a quick note. So your y-axis wires, you want them to be about 6 inches here from the cable track to the end, because you're going to strip off at least 3 inches of this gray jacket on 2 of these. This one's for your brake, the 2-conductor. The 4-conductor is for your power for your motor, and the 12-conductor is for your home switch and your encoder. So that's your y-axis. And then your z-axis goes down the arm, which we will get to in a little bit. Okay, so these wires here have to go under this cover. They have to go down through this cable track right here. They have to wrap back up like here. They got to bend around, and then they got to go through this cable track here. So there's got to be enough wire before you start doing this to reach that far. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take the 12-conductor wire. I'm going to stick it down through this cable track, and you gotta wiggle it and twist it and push and pull and start and stop. Sometimes it goes easy, sometimes it just wants to fight. So there you go. That's how that gets in there, like that. Now my 2 hoses, my 4-conductor cable, I want to get down through there, but I want to do the best that I can to not twist around this wire. So I'm going to try and keep this 12-conductor wire in that back corner, and I'm going to try and keep these wires in this corner as I push them down through. And these will go a little easier since that big cable's already in there. There you go, just like that. Okay, so it doesn't matter if they're twisted here, they're not going to be moving here. There's that metal cover that goes on here. But you don't want them twisted down in here. All right. So what I want to look at now is I want to make sure that I have enough slack over the top of this arm coming into this cable track here. Okay, because when this comes all the way home, it's gonna bump into that housing right there, and that's okay. We just need to have enough slack right here. We don't want too much. We don't want it to catch on the corner of the table, but we just need to have a nice slack like that right there. All right. So once I have that, I can put this cover back on, and I can flip this up and attach it to, see the clips have pins on them, and the bracket has holes in it, so that hole clips on that pin on both sides, and there's no way I can do that with one hand, but you get the gist. Okay, so I've got the metal cover on here covering the wiring, and then I got this I got this cable track bent up here and clipped onto those clips. So now I need to get this extra cabling right here fed down through this cable track, which is for the cutting head right here. So again, I'm going to take the big, I'm going to kind of tuck these other hoses out of the way, and I'm going to take the bigger of the set, kind of straighten it out so it doesn't have a kink on it, because that's going to mess around with us. I'm going to put it down through there, kind of turn it and twist it. And when it gets down here to this cable track end, it's going to want to push that around, so I'm going to kind of have to work it until I can get it all the way through there like that. So now I've got that hose in there, or cable, sorry. So now I can take the smaller cable and hose and stick it down in there and make sure we don't get it all twisted around. See how this wants to go in here. Kind of don't want to fight it, you want to get it to go naturally. There we go. And don't kink these hoses, that's your air hoses to your cutting head. And you can pull some back, make a good amount of slack in here, because you've got this cover that goes over there. Right here it is. So as long as this cover will fit on there, everything's good. Okay, so that's how that goes. Okay, so we got all the wire in for the cutting head and the motor at the top of the arm, so everything through this cable track right here. And I've got about a good amount of wire right here, 5 feet. Okay, that's okay, because when I get done, it'll tuck back down behind the machine, and that way, if this machine ever decides to become a table style, like that machine, where it's, you know, at a flat angle, there will be enough wire to reach the electrical panel when it's down here on the stand. So this extra wire is not a problem. Don't cut it off right here. Don't do it. Okay,